Good evening. Today is January 26, 2021, Zoning Hearing Board. Tonight we'll be discussing continuance from previous meetings, appeal number 20-1881, and that is the challenging the validity of the mixed-use overlay ordinance. We've been last few meetings we've been discussing. It's about standing right now. That's what we're discussing, about standing. We've had some testimony, so we want to stay with that. I think we may have somebody else testifying today. I'm not really sure. Adam, did you say earlier that we have somebody who wants party standing?
Yeah, Nate Fox, who represents Shady Brook Farms. He's been at the last two meetings, and I believe he will be here tonight, but he's already written correspondence to us requesting party status and would do that on the record tonight as well. And I'm not sure if he will have any evidence to present or questions in addition to those of Ms. Kirk and Mr. Harris, but he will be here as well, is my understanding.
Adam, I just want to ask one more thing before I start. Do we have anybody on the phone who's going to
get clarification on something? So he wants party status to whether or not there's standing, or
well, like he's
in the same way that any a neighbor would be able to either oppose or support or comment on it. Anyone that is in that area of in proximity to the property would request party status. And again, I don't know if he's taking a position or being neutral, but he wants to party status as a neighboring property owner. Is
he supporting the property owners or the appellant, or do we know?
No, I thought what I was asking is we're trying to determine whether or not the applicant has standing in the first phase of this. So he's requesting party status
because he lives close
as a neighboring property.
Yes,
as a neighboring property to the subject property for that's involved with the overlay district.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, but Adam, one more question and go along with that. Even though he wants party status, I'll have to assume because he's so close that he can argue about standing as well. I don't know what position he's taking. Yeah,
I don't want to speak for Mr. Fox about what his position is and all of that, but I just wanted, but yes, he will be requesting that, or has already requested it via correspondence to the board.
Okay, so we're looking at who's coming up first. Well, they're all sworn in. Is it Mr. Gordon? I can't remember the names. I know Mr. Harris is here, and Mr. Gordon, I believe, and who's going to be starting their testimony? Where are we at right now? What's left here to discuss?
I believe I'm not sure if they're finished with the economic expert, and then after that, one of the applicants would also be testifying.
Okay. The economic expert was Mr. Schwartz, or what's his name?
I think it was Charles Swanson?
Swanson, that's it, yes.
And then Larry Borda would also be testifying.
Okay. So right now we want to ask Mr. Swanson to come up and finish his testimony. Is that what we're trying to do right now?
If I may, I was under the impression that we were finished with Mr. Swanson's testimony, that there was all cross-examination and all that was done, and it was just Mr. Borda was left.
Correct. And then any...
I thought that myself.
Yeah, and I guess we just need to have them enter the room. But yeah, I believe it. I wasn't sure if they had anything left for him, but yeah. Otherwise, then it would just be Larry Borda.
So, Larry, Mr. Borda, are you here tonight?
Moving him in now.
Okay. Okay.
And we need Eric Goldberg and Stephen Harris as well.
Correct.
This is Larry Borda. Can you hear me?
I can.
You can.
Great.
Mr. Harris?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Chair. This is Eric Goldberg. I think Steve was in the same position I was. We were in the waiting room and we were muted. So we weren't able to speak for the last couple minutes.
Okay. Well, we're going to begin. Where did we leave off? I thought we were finished with your economic testimony or your economic guide.
Correct. There were a total of 3 witnesses that are being presented. We did Gordon Meth the first night, Dr. Swanson the second night, and both of those witnesses are complete. There's 1 witness left.
And that witness is who?
Larry Borda.
Okay. Is he here?
Yes, he is.
Can he come up? I don't think we swore him in. I don't believe.
I don't believe we did either.
All right. As soon as he's brought into the room, Bill will take care of that.
I am in, and can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes. Very handsome man.
Sorry about that.
Bill, we need to swear him in before he does any testimony.
Mr. Borda, you solemnly swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Terrific. And I know one exhibit that we're going to use, so we might as well put it up now. And I'm not sure how you work it, if you want to control the screen or not. It would be Exhibit A11, which is a copy of the zoning map.
Jim, is that you or Kirk does that? Or who's putting that up there? We'll get it. Give it a second.
It's okay. If it's easier, do you want me to share my screen?
Sure. Yeah, we can.
Okay. I'm not sure. Kirk, is that what you'd prefer me to do?
Yeah, Ashton, say yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Sorry, yeah, we don't have any documents, so
Okay.
you guys gotta share them.
Okay, hang on 1 second and just give me a minute.
I don't have a clue how to share my.
It's all right. Take your time.
Okay, is this working?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. And this was previously marked as Exhibit A11, and it's just a zoning map of Lower Makefield Township. And I thought it would be easier to describe to everyone. Can everybody see my cursor?
We can. But if you're going to be something specifically, you might have to enlarge that to wherever you're pointing to.
Okay, we can do that. Larry, if you could tell the board where you live, please.
508 Heritage Oak Drive, Yardley.
Okay. And I am pointing with my cursor to an area there. I'm not sure if that can be seen.
Yes, I'm in the lavender triangle that's immediately beneath what's designated.
Can you enlarge it? You should be able to enlarge
Sure.
that, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so in the lavender triangle immediately beneath the triangle that's marked as C1 is my development, which is boundaried by the railroad tracks, and then Heacock Road on one side, which is one means of ingress and egress, and Stony Hill Road on the other side, which is the other sole means of ingress and egress.
Larry, is it possible you could just make it a little bit larger? I don't
Sure.
know. Okay, there you go. That's better.
Yeah, so if you see at the top of that, I guess it's lavender, pen circle, that's basically the intersection where my house is located with Heritage Oak, where the cursor is.
And about how far do you live from the subject property?
As the crow flies, based on Google, about 5,000 feet.
Okay, so basically slightly under a mile.
Correct.
Okay, and the Prickett Preserve property is where the proposed development in the overlay district will take place, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And you're familiar with the proposed overlay district and accompanying development?
Generally, yes.
Okay. And you attended the hearings in August regarding the potential enactment of the overlay district with developers presented their witnesses?
I believe I've attended every meeting of whichever commission or board has considered this since the inception, including the zoning hearing boards. I think the only meeting I missed was the planning board meeting, which took place last night.
Okay. And by way of background, I'm going to show now the OR district, and where my cursor is now is the subject property right in here, basically a little bit to the right of what's marked O/R. And that is the subject property, correct?
Yes, on the other side of Township Line Road from where it's designated OR and boundaried by Stony Hill Road to the south, and Yardley Newtown Road bypass to the north.
Okay. And just to give everybody a little bit, I guess, further description of this area, where my cursor is now immediately above the subject property is basically the lower Makefield, is basically a corporate center with the Dunkin' Donuts.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
And where the O/R is Shady Brook Farm.
Correct.
Okay.
And where's Larry's property with this screen right here?
Larry's screen is right where
Okay,
the cursor
okay.
is
All
now in that. I'm not sure if that's magenta, purple, lavender, whatever
Yeah, I
color you
understand.
want to call that.
I can say it.
Okay. And there are there are 6 properties within 400 feet of the subject property, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. You have Shady Brook Farm, which is right here, which is obviously right across Township Line Road from it. You have, and that's Shady Brook Farm, that's tax map parcel number 20-12-1. You've got the corporate center right above it with the Dunkin' Donuts and the hotel. And, that is parcel number 20-16-041. You've got this parcel to the extreme edge of the OR district, which is owned by Frankfurt Hospital. That's 20-12-1-1. You've got this area all in blue here, which is just open space and owned by either Lower Makefield Township and or PennDOT, but this is all undeveloped land.
Mr. Goldberg,
Yes.
I don't want to hold this thing up, but who's testifying? You or Mr. Borden? I object to you just, reciting everything and saying, huh?
The answer to your question is Mr. Board is testifying. I'm trying to expedite and move things along.
I think we ought to get a little more direct testimony from Mr. Borda and less of your description.
Your description of the surrounding properties is accurate.
Okay. Then going down a little bit further in the OR district, Larry, is this, there's a parcel number 20-12-2-1, which is an office building, correct?
Yeah, that's an office complex, correct.
Okay. And then you have Floral Vale, which is a little bit further down here. And that's parcel number, 20-12-6-3.
And that's exclusively office condominiums.
Okay.
And maybe a restaurant.
So in this situation, as I mentioned, those 6 properties are the ones located within 400 feet of the subject property, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. Shady Brook Farm has a residence on it, correct? And in addition to the Shady Brook Farm being an active farm, it also has one residence on it. Is that correct?
I believe there's at least one, yes.
Okay. And what is the closest residence, ignoring that, to the subject property?
I believe the closest residential properties other than the one residence on Shady Brook is the new development called Flowers Fields, I think it's called.
And where I'm moving the cursor in the pink area marked HC, is that where Flowers Field is?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That's you guys, is it?
And do you have any objections to what is being proposed on the Prickett Preserve property, or any concerns?
I do.
Okay. And again, going back to where the general area where your house is in this kind of purplish lavender color, could you explain what those objections are and why?
So, and I think the chairman has said that he's somewhat familiar with this area, but as you can see, my development is sandwiched between Stony Hill Road, railroad tracks, and Heacock, which turns into Oxford Valley Road as you get closer to Route 1. So that means basically for me to get to other areas of Lower Makefield north of me and or to get to Newtown, I have to go by way of Stony Hill and or Heacock and Oxford Valley. There's already been assessments made by the developer's traffic engineer that 10% of the traffic that's going to be generated by this project is going to be going toward Stony Hill, for which there are no improvements proposed other than for some minor traffic light changes where Stony Hill intersects Township line. So there's definitely going to be increased traffic on one side of my development, which is going to make life more difficult for me. In addition, you have Heacock, which is another one of the few thoroughfares that runs from south of Route 1 to and through Lower Makefield. So anybody who's coming from south of Route 1, it's quite likely that one of or both of these roads is going to be used as one of the main thoroughfares to get over to Wegmans or to get around Wegmans because of the traffic that's generated by Wegmans. And that is going to increase traffic. It's going to make it difficult for me to exit and enter my development, which in turn, I believe, is going to have an impact not only on quality of life, but also on my property values. I also believe that this project will have a negative impact as a function of the impact on property values, which have been testified to by our expert as pertains to what impact there's going to be by virtue of this project and its inability to rent the majority of the apartments that are being proposed. Moreover, I am concerned about the potential for Giants and or McCafferty's to be put out of business by the Wegmans. And if that happens, my thinking is that similar to what happened with ShopRite, which was vacant for many years, that if one of those two stores goes vacant, we will have a similar situation. That in turn will have an impact on the other tenants in those areas, in those market areas. And that in turn is going to have a negative impact on my property value and my quality of life.
And where I'm pointing with the cursor, this is the intersection of Stony Hill and Heacock?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Larry, did you have any more testimony?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's obviously impacts monetarily from a standpoint of property tax impacts. And I believe there are also statutory violations that are being done by the developer here, but that doesn't necessarily relate to standing for me individually. It's more for every resident of Lower Makefield, who I believe will be negatively impacted by this project.
I have no further questions.
Mr. Harris, would you like to?
Am I on?
You are.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
I'm sorry, Steve, before you start, do you want me to leave this up, sharing the screen?
Please. Steve has something to put up there.
Yeah, that's fine. Mr. Borda, as I understand your last comment, you're concerned that the impact on the quality of life, the increased traffic, the potential for the Giant or McCaffrey's to go out of business, the impact on the other tenants of those shopping centers will negatively impact all of the residents of Lower Makefield Township. Is that correct?
I believe it will impact all of the residents of Lower Makefield, and I believe it will especially impact the residents of my development because we are adjacent to the C1 triangle that's north of my development where Giant and McCafferty's exist, and we are hemmed in by Heacock Road and by Stony Hill Road.
Okay. If I was standing on Heritage Grove Drive and looking at your property, your neighbors to the right, Timothy and Janine Weed, they would be equally impacted as you would?
I believe that every person in my development, subject to the varying property values within that development, but they would all be impacted severely by this project.
Okay. And if I understood your economic expert, he basically said that, anybody that was like a mile away from this project would be adversely affected. Do you agree with that statement?
I believe what he said was that many people would be impacted to varying degrees, especially those in approximation of a mile of the project. I don't have an expertise to opine on what he testified to.
Okay. Then I won't ask you any further about that, but I do want to ask you this. You filed this action before the zoning hearing board. And of course, Mr. Goldberg is representing you in this matter. You filed an action in the Court of Common Pleas that's being represented by Paul Norris, one of Mr. Goldberg's partners. Now, your expert testified that he thought that you would have a 1.8% diminution in property values, as would all of your neighbors, correct?
I thought it was 1.4%, and I don't know what you mean by all of my neighbors.
Well, let's assume it's 1.4%. He said that basically, let's just limit it to your development, that everybody in your development would have basically a 1.4% diminution in property values. Isn't that correct?
I don't recall that specific testimony.
Okay.
That is correct. I remember reading that and I remember talking about it. It was like it may have been 1.5%, Steve. There was a range from maybe 1 to like 15. But when you read it and when you talked to your last guy, he said it was probably closer to 1.4.
Mr. Chairman, I agree. It was 1.5 plus another 0.3% that made it 1.8. But the issue that I was really getting at was that was an effect that was going to be felt by everybody in your neighborhood, wasn't it?
Same answer as last.
Well, what's special about your house that would make it different than anybody else in your development?
Other than the difference in value from house to house, I think everyone in my development will be impacted similarly on a percentage basis by virtue of this project going forward.
Okay. And, you know, you're an attorney, you're extremely well regarded, you're well experienced. Explain to me on what basis you have brought these two challenges and spent tens of thousands of dollars on attorney's fees when your property value is going to be affected 1.4 to 1.8%. How does that make any sense?
Well, you're looking at one expert's testimony on one facet of the impact. I feel very, very strongly that this is bad for the entirety of my township and my fellow citizens. And it's in large part what drives me to want to do this. I believe that this project will have a negative impact overall on the township, on tax revenues. I believe it will have a negative impact on longstanding and good business neighbors. And I believe it will cost us more to provide fire and police on this project, which by the developer's own numbers will only generate $200,000 a year and will impact, and that will cost the township monies to cover that gap.
And that's
let me finish. I'm answering your question. That's the main driver for why I'm doing what I'm doing. I am also especially concerned about what the expert testified to in terms of diminution in value on my property. And I am concerned about diminution in the value of my property, which is not necessarily just a function of the negatives that surround the project per se, but that are also a function of what happens when McCafferty and or Giants goes out of business or shuts their doors and that mall is vacant, combined with the fact that my development that I live in has to deal with additional traffic generated by this project on both sides of the only streets on which I can get in and out of the project. So as far as I'm concerned, you know, the analysis by the expert is not the be all end all in terms of what the impact is on my development. I think common sense can dictate that anybody who knows this area, and as the chairman indicated before, he knows this area is already heavily traveled. Anybody with common sense who has lived in this township for a long time, who has seen what happened at the ShopRite being vacant for year after year after year, and the loss of other tenants in that strip center, combined with the heavy traffic that already exists in this area and which will be worsened with no improvements offered by the developer to address those improvements, I think all of that can be taken into consideration as having a direct impact on my development.
Mr. Board, I'm sorry. Steve, you want to go? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. And what you testified to are the impacts that will be experienced in general by all of the residents of Lower Makefield Township, in your opinion, correct?
Well, you're misphrasing my testimony. I mean, I went on at length and explained that it's a two-pronged issue in my mind. It's not only the impact on every resident of the township, it's also specific to those people who live in my development who are uniquely situated to be severely impacted not only by the traffic that this project will develop without any improvements being offered to the traffic lights or the intersections or the lanes, combined with the C1 area immediately adjacent to my development, which I believe will be severely impacted by this project negatively.
Okay. So you've got a two-pronged objection. One is an objection that's going to be shared by all of the residents of Lower Makefield, and you've got a second objection that is going to be shared by all of the residents of your subdivision, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you mentioned McCaffrey's, you mentioned Giant. Have you talked to the owners of the Giant about this project?
I have not.
Have you talked to the owners of McCaffrey's about this project?
I have not.
Are the owners of the Giant or the owners of McCaffrey contributing to your legal fees?
I am responsible for the legal fees.
Objection. That is no relevance to this.
I didn't ask that question. I asked, are they contributing?
Objection.
The question here is who's aggrieved? If somebody else is paying and contributing to legal fees, this person isn't aggrieved. That's a fair question.
It's not a fair question.
The fair question that goes to bias and a question that goes to whether or not, in fact, it's Mr. Borda that's aggrieved or somebody else who thinks there's aggrieved.
It's only an aggrievance to the extent.
Objection.
Just to clarify a couple things. The question is, well, I think it's already been answered, that he's answered that he was responsible for it.
But that's not the question. The question is somebody contributing, not whether he's responsible, but are they contributing?
And Mr. Goldberg, you think it's inappropriate because?
It's absolutely irrelevant to this. There's no basis for it. Mr. Borda is the only person before here. How Mr. Borda gets his money or pays his bills is irrelevant to anything. The issue before this board at this particular moment pertains to his standing. Does he have standing? Is he an aggrieved party by virtue of the testimony that's been presented? Whether you pay, I pay, he pays, somebody else pays, has no relevance whatsoever.
It certainly has relevance because the question is whether it's Mr. Borda that's really aggrieved or somebody else who's paying the bill that thinks they're aggrieved.
Well, Mr. Harris, I would disagree only at this stage, and specifically because he's not saying that he's aggrieved because of his legal fees. If that was a basis for why he's saying he was aggrieved, then I would think maybe it's relevant, but I don't.
I'm not suggesting for a moment that he's aggrieved because he has legal fees. I mean, my clients are aggrieved because they've got legal fees. I'm objecting because the question is whether or not it's really Mr. Borda that's aggrieved or somebody else who's contributing to his legal fees. That's relevant to determining whether it's really Mr. Borda that's aggrieved or it's somebody else.
Can I interject here, if you may? If I may, I understand what everybody's saying. I understand what Mr. Harris is saying. I read the whole report and all the minutes from the Board of Supervisors, and it looks like it's being redone again right in front of me. And there was a lot of in the minutes from the Board of Supervisors that alluded to some of the things that Mr. Harris is saying. Be that as it may, I think we're getting a little off track. We're trying to do standard. And I know Mr. Boyd, he seems like an excellent guy. And all of you guys know. But I'm still trying to, McCaffrey's a giant. To me, I don't know what that how's that even become part of it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll withdraw my question, and I have no further questions of Mr. Borda.
Okay. Mr. Borda, would you like to continue? Because I would love to continue.
May I ask some questions?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Barb. No.
Mr. Borda, you said that your development and you are uniquely situated to be harmed based on the limitation of access out of your development. Is that an accurate summary of what you just testified to?
It was part of what I testified to, yes.
Okay. Now, you also just said, though, that the closest residential development near the property is Flowers Field, correct?
Yes.
And that has two main accesses as well, doesn't it?
I don't know. I didn't look at that.
Okay. Is it fair to say that to get into the Flower Mills development due to its location, most people either have to come from Stony Hill Road into it or from Yardley Langhorne Road?
Yeah, but I don't. Yardley Langhorne is not one of the major thoroughfares from the south of Route 1 into and through Lower Makefield. And it didn't seem to me as though it would be logical to determine that a lot of the traffic that's going to be heading over towards this project and over towards Newtown is going to be coming through Stony Hill and or Oxford Valley / Heacock.
So it's your testimony that notwithstanding the fact that the residential development of Flowers Field is closer to the subject property, they will not suffer the same unique type of harm as you in your development?
I haven't looked at that in detail. I couldn't answer that off the top of my head.
Okay. And you also said that you oppose the project in its entirety, correct?
Yes.
And you feel that the proposed project would not benefit the residents of the township, the entire township, correct?
Correct.
You participated in the hearings before the Board of Supervisors when they decided whether or not to enact the mixed-use overlay district. Isn't that correct?
I'm not sure which meeting you're talking about, but I believe I attended each and every one. Yes.
There were like 2 or 3 of them in front of the supervisors.
I would have said 3 or 4. I don't know. They start to blur after a while.
Yeah, but you were in
17th meeting of 2020.
Yeah, but you attended those meetings, correct?
Like I said, I believe I attended all of them. Yes.
Okay, and you had full opportunity to present your objections to the supervisors at the time of the hearing, just like every other resident in the township. Isn't that correct?
Based on what I knew at the time, yes.
Okay, and it was the function of the supervisors in their legislative capacity to ascertain whether or not this ordinance should have been approved. Isn't that correct?
I'd have to be making an assumption to answer that question.
It is
I have a
not
question.
it is not within
Question
the
here. How
purview.
does this relate? Are we focusing on the standing issue right
We
now?
are people. I just want to let him to go a little bit before I just stop it. I don't want to not interrupt him.
All right, so the only other question is, Mr. Borda, the objections that you voiced at the supervisors' meetings concerning traffic, congestion, and the concern about diminishing property values were the same sort of objections that were raised by other residents in the township during the supervisors' meetings. Isn't that correct?
I don't know what you mean by that. What do you mean same sort of questions?
No.
Were there objections that were similar to the objections I raised? Yes.
Okay. I have nothing further.
I just want to say one thing, and I read the minutes, 70 pages. And one thing I do want to say, Mr. Borda, you do seem like a great guy, but you mentioned in there that there was no traffic considerations or improvements to be done. But in the minutes, it clearly states that there is.
Well, I believe, Mr. Chairman, that in terms of the areas that I'm talking about that directly impact my development, there's nothing that's being done on Stony Hill. There's nothing that's being done on Oxford Valley, Heacock, the entirety of that run, where it intersects with Route 1, Big Oak, where that intersects with Oxford Valley coming over across Route 1. No improvements on any of those. The lion's share of the improvements are occurring where the bypass intersects Stony Hill Road, and there's a slight, I believe there's a traffic signal change in terms of adding.
That's correct.
A right turn arrow at the intersection of Stony Hill and Township. I believe that's the only alleged improvement on Stony Hill Road. So in terms of the roads that I'm talking about and dealing with the traffic that's coming from the south of the township, which has limited access points to deal with Levittown and all of the other townships and areas south of Route 1 that are going to have traffic generated migrating over to Lower Makefield to reach this project and or to avoid this project because of traffic congestion, there is nothing by way of traffic improvement.
Again, and I want to stop you. Again, the traffic improvements, and I don't know if you could say, I don't know if I could either, but there's numerous traffic improvements at the site of the property owners, which would say that traffic, you may never even see it. You're speculating that you would. Now, hold on a second. before you go any further, and you weren't clear, but in front of your house, I don't think they're going to widen the street there. But I have to say, those changes that they mentioned, and I read that, and I also saw where Mr. Gordon said, well, what if they don't do that much? And I believe Mr. Harris said they would do whatever it would take. I'm just going by what the Board of Supervisors meetings that I read.
Well, so if you look at, they've added a turning lane into the project itself, and there might be a light there. So the improvements that they've made are immediately in or adjacent to the project, which are designed to facilitate primarily traffic coming from the interstate, and to a much lesser degree, probably some percentage of 1% of the dollars are going for this one signal where Stony Hill intersects Township Line Road. Now, the developer did not go through and do an analysis as called for by PennDOT, which basically has a radius, and unfortunately I can't remember what that radius is, which asks for them to do projections on the impact. What the developer did say is that it would do whatever PennDOT asked of it to do as far as the permitting process was concerned. But in terms of what the developer has presented to you, it does not fulfill, my understanding, it does not fulfill the criteria established by PennDOT to look at a radius surrounding the project and what the impact is going to be on other intersections. We've already seen that the intersection at Oxford Valley Road and Route 1 is maxed out. It's been widened. It's still a mess, especially around the holidays. We've already seen, and you talked about it at the last hearing, there's increased congestion on Heacock and Stony Hill in these areas surrounding where the Giant and McCafferty's projects are. The township is step by step getting more and more congested. And as far as I'm concerned, this is going to be a tipping point for my development because it is sandwiched in between two of the major and very few thoroughfares that allow people to get from the south of Route 1 and over to the area of this project and or Newtown.
I understand what you're saying. Right.
Can I ask a couple things to clarify that point?
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Borda, are you saying that you were suggesting that there should be additional traffic improvements closer to your neighborhood?
What I'm suggesting, and what I think was testified to by Mr. Meth, our traffic engineering expert, was that PennDOT criteria, as published by them in their tech whatever mandates, or at least
we saw it.
I don't want to get too legal. I'm not sure about the mandate part.
We've all seen it.
Basically, what they do is they say, as far as the permitting process is concerned, this is what you should be looking at. And my understanding is that circumference incorporates my development and even outward toward where Route 1 intersects with Oxford Valley Road. So as we sit here, we're somewhat blinded because we're limited by what the developer chose to look at because his expert thought that was pertinent, and because he hopes that the PennDOT will not require, as part of the permitting process, that this extended area be looked at. You as a zoning board, I don't know if you have the authority to tell a developer you should be doing what PennDOT suggests they do in their publications. But there's a big concern on my part for people in my development and for me in terms of the impact on my development and in terms of the township and those people who use Oxford Valley Road, where it transgresses Route 1 to get in and out of the township. I just think this is going to make things worse, and nobody has looked at what that impact is going to be, and nobody is offering anything by way of property or traffic improvements. And in fact, they're going to be very limited to do that because, again, that intersection, that bridge of Oxford Valley Road over Route 1 is maxed out. It's not going to get any better. And when you make that left on Big Oak Road, heading over towards this project, as you know, it narrows to a one-lane bridge crossing I-95, which is another issue.
Mr. Borden, I have to remind you, I don't disagree or agree with you, but that area you're talking about is got to be at least 3 miles away, that Route 1, and am I correct? Down there?
I haven't measured that.
We know it's not close.
I would guess it's at least 2 miles.
We're looking at standing. Please bear with us. We're trying to be fair here. But
my point.
Please don't interrupt me.
Sorry.
I do reading the minutes. I read it all, and it was a lot. And now I'm like hearing things that aren't accurate in that on the minutes I got, which says they'll do whatever is necessary to make it work. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I got to tell you one thing that does bother me, and we have to remember we're here for standing, not whether we care about the project or not. And when you said something about Giant and McCaffrey's going out of business, that part turned your testimony around a little bit, and we're not looking about that. We're looking about the standing here, and that's what my concern is. And you're sort of not. You're. I would say you're equivocating a little bit with this traffic study, and I got it. But you are going to suffer not suffer just as much as anybody else would there, as I am too, because I live around there, as you know. And that's what we're trying to focus on. Pete, I know you're dying to say something. Please do.
Actually, I'm fine at the moment here. I think I had a couple of questions that probably should have been addressed earlier. Is that property has various uses that falls under this and special exemptions.
Mm-hmm.
Was any analysis done regarding what would have happened under the case, say it was developed as an office park, to traffic and economic impact?
That's been looked at before, but I also think you were getting a little far afield.
I agree with that.
That's a planning board jurisdiction, which we don't have authorization.
We're here for one purpose.
Right.
Standing on this appeal to invalidate the Board of Supervisors amendment to the ordinance of that overlay district. That's what we're here for. Whether we like the project or not, that's another day. I think we should stay on that narrative. Am I wrong here? I mean, we're not here to say like a Wegmans or a ShopRite. I'm looking at, do you have standing?
Is Mr. Borga's testimony complete, or is there additional?
Mr. Borga?
Excuse me. I don't know. I think I've said all I had to say. Most of your commentary, I didn't think there was a question in there, so I don't think there's anything else for me.
Fair enough.
Do you have additional testimony or public comment or discussion?
I think Nate Fox is here, and he wanted, as I stated previously, to request party status as a representing neighboring property owners.
Oh, the one that lives close? How close?
I think
this is the one that wants party status.
He represents
Nate's across the street.
So if Nate's here, I guess you could the administrator
He's going to speak to standing
that screen now
regarding Mr. Borda.
Yep. Hi, Adam. Nate Fox here on behalf of Shady Brook at Fleming's Inc., which is the property owner for the Shady Brook farm parcel, which is immediately across the street from the property before you this evening. We're requesting party status as we have an interest in this overlay district. My client hopes to obtain similar relief and believes that this type of overlay is the future of the OR district for this area of the township to be economically viable. So that's why we've asked for party status. We do not anticipate presenting any testimony. We do not need to further examine any of the witnesses. We think the township has done a fine job of that, and that's we're here. We're happy to answer any questions if there are any, but I don't know that there's any need for us to take further time this evening other than to preserve our status as a party, as an adjoining property owner.
And I would recommend that party status be granted as a neighboring property owner.
I agree. Any objection? Yes, sir. He lives right there. He's got the right to be there. If he's within there, that's his right.
Do we have any public comment on any of this, or?
Adam, Public
Yeah,
comment. I mean, we have anything, and we need to explain to them though.
Yeah, just before we begin the public comment, because I do believe we are going to have some, if it can be limited to the issue that is before the board right now, which is just on the issue of standing.
Correct.
If the board were to vote that the applicants do have standing, we could then proceed to a full hearing on the merits, and then any comments about the actual merits of the application can and should be addressed. However, this, since the board has limited the testimony to standing, the public comment should really be limited to that issue as well.
I agree with that, Adam. How are we going to proceed with this, though? I don't know how many people we have standing by. Are we going to bring them in one by one? And
We have 2 public comment.
Yes, you can do one by one.
Okay, we'll bring in Lisa now.
I guess we can get rid of the map, or if we need the map, maybe we should leave it up there. Yeah, maybe we should.
Hello?
Hey, Lisa.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you.
Can we see her? Or
Okay. Okay. Yes.
She has her TV on her phone on.
Oh.
You have your camera on, and you'll need to be sworn in.
All
Turn the
right.
TV
Hold
off.
on.
You turn your other stuff off so we don't hear
I
that.
will.
Thank you. I know it's.
Do you need my address or not?
Name and address, please.
When you get sworn in, Bill will ask you all this. Yes.
Okay. Lisa Tenney. Huh?
Hold on.
Lisa Tenney. Tenney. 156 Pinnacle Circle, Yardley.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Why don't we, excuse me 1 second. Could you put Lisa's picture up there? Or, I'm sorry, Lisa. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Is Lisa's picture available? Or
No, I'm
she's
not
only on the
going
phone.
okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead, Lisa. I apologize.
Okay. I just wanted to call in. So like Esquire Borda, I have followed every single meeting, called in and listened.
Mm-hmm.
And I live, my backyard faces Stony Hill Road. So of course I get the impact of traffic, but that isn't the point of this. So I support fully Esquire Borda's concerns as a LMT citizen, and his standing, his wish for his property to be looked at as being impacted by this development, and especially due to the proximity. Now, I'm a PhD trained scientist, and we use mathematical trends, and he has an expert economist from Philadelphia who has given you a fact that his property, due to the proximity, will be negatively impacted. Now, I don't know, so you guys don't believe in fact? So this is how science and how we develop hypotheses of what's going to happen in the future and base experiments on. Now, that is a fact. Each property, depending on their initial property value and their proximity to the development, will, we call it, as a scientist, differentially, negatively affected. So I support his concerns. I believe in mathematical models that support trends. He's also had an expert traffic person, and we're all aware that the traffic improvements are just on the 95 getting into that into the Wegmans. So again, I do believe everybody will be differentially affected. Some may be positive, but mostly negative. And his property in the proximity in his particular development, we all live in different developments, different proximities, may have, well, it was proven, will have, be negatively impacted.
Lisa, can I interrupt or can I stop? Can I say something?
No, I think I'm done. Yep.
Thank you for showing up. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I agree, mathematics is a perfect science, but you seem to be.
It is a perfect science.
But not when it comes.
It's what everything is based on.
Excuse me now.
Engineering and science. Trends.
Lisa.
Engineering is math-based.
It is, but you're trying to, Lisa, only one of us can talk at a time.
No, there's no speculation. Mathematical models are mathematical models.
Is there any more testimony towards standing? We have another person in the.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Does anybody have anything to ask Lisa?
No.
Thank you very much.
All right, bringing in Lewis now. Lewis, you have to hit *6 to unmute.
Hi, this is Lewis Papastrat.
Hey, Lewis, thanks for showing up. You're going to need to be sworn in, but first, can you give your name and full name and address?
Sure. My full name is Lewis Papastrat at 526 Heritage Oak Drive, Yardley, Pennsylvania.
506, is that what you said?
No, 526.
Okay.
Heritage
You're
Oak.
close to the other guy. Okay. All right. Bill?
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you have to give will be the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Sir, could you spell your last name for me?
Sure. P as in Peter, A, P as in Peter, A, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, R, A, T as in Tom.
All right, thank you.
All right. Tell us why you have standing.
Yes, well, I live in the Heritage Oak neighborhood that Mr. Borda is in, and also the other lady. And I agree with Mr. Borda. I think he's presented a lot of good issues about the impact as far as traffic. Also, something that was mentioned previously about the train crossings. I don't know if you've been on that road at times when we have a large freight train going through, but it backs up a lot of traffic. That's another impact that's going to provide a certain problem for us in Heritage Oaks. Making left-hand turns out of my development is a big problem at this point in time, as well as it will be in the future. Then when you have the proposed project with the farm across the street and all the good stuff that's going on over there, as this becomes a major.
Stay on topic. Stay on topic. We don't understand.
Well, I'm just saying. There's going to be two large businesses facing each other. So that road is going to be, as Mr. Borda had indicated, that it's going to be a very difficult type of travel. So I'm just saying to you that the impact is being missed here as to what's going on with it. I do agree also with the fact that other businesses could be impacted by Wegmans coming in and creating the just another supermarket that we really don't need in the township.
We don't get involved in competition.
Right. It will be competitive. It's like, and we've tried to, I think the township's tried to do the right things in the past. So I'm just voicing my support and being a resident in the township and obviously in the Heritage Oak development. And that's really all I have to say.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything they want to ask?
I have no questions.
I have no questions. Thank you very much for showing up.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, where are we at now?
We have one more public comment from Ed.
Okay, bring him in.
Bringing him in now.
Hello.
Hey, Ed.
Edward Albertson, 1554 Edgewood Road.
Okay, sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony about to give will be the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
My inquiry is, I'm on Edgewood Road, and the traffic that we have, the one end of Edgewood is 25 miles per hour. Ours is 40. Building up the traffic to get for people from the lower end of Lower Makefield to the upper end, I believe there was no traffic study done for Edgewood to get to the new development. Along with that, I haven't heard anything on the improvements for utilities brought in to this new development. Where are they going to tap in for wastewater? Where's the power coming from? Who's going to pay for all these improvements?
Ed, we're trying to limit this to just standing, whether or not there's standing.
We got to stay with the standing. That's some other day on that. Let's go with the standing first. How are you going to be aggrieved in your condition more than anybody else would? I understand what you're saying, but that's not tonight. And I got that. So you can continue on where you live, Edgewood Avenue. You talked about the traffic, and then you keep saying that we're ignoring. We're not really ignoring it. We've seen the studies, but the studies indicated a lot of the traffic will be coming off of 95 at 332 and so on. But I understand what you're saying. But we're here tonight just to see if these people making this appeal have standing.
I agree with the first person, I believe was an Esquire that was speaking board.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I do agree with most of the things he was saying, which is why I'm calling in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
in there?
No further public comment.
And Mr. Chair, we had no further witnesses, but there are just two things before the board does the vote on it. One, just want to make sure that all the exhibits are accepted into evidence. That's A1 through A11.
Adam?
No objection.
Barb, any objection from you?
No.
Okay.
And
we
the
can
second
admit
thing
those
is,
without objection.
okay. Sorry, Adam, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just going to say we can admit those without objection.
Okay. And the second thing is, I know we covered a lot in, I guess, about 2.5 nights worth of testimony. Some of it got a little astray. If I could have a minute or two to sum up, that would also be requested.
Go ahead.
Okay. Initially in this, Mr. Board had described, also piggybacking on the testimony of the other two witnesses, how his particular area, his particular house is impacted via traffic and pecuniary interest. There are certainly a plethora of cases that have been decided by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania pertaining to standing. And oftentimes you will hear those cases talk about if somebody is right across the street or if they're 200-300 yards away, they have automatic standing. And much like the example tonight with Shady Brook being right across the street, there was no question about it. Mm-hmm. However, the corollary isn't necessarily true in the sense of just because you are not 300, 400 feet away doesn't mean you do not have standing. For the reasons that were discussed earlier in terms of the traffic, in terms of the financial interest, from not just Larry Borda, but also the prior two witnesses, he has that individual standing. It should also be noted that this is a little bit of an unusual case in that when you asked in the beginning of this, the very first hearing back in December, I gave the example of suppose a township does something inappropriate in the middle of a cornfield and there's no one there. In this particular case, there are very, very few properties within 100 feet of the subject property. The closest residential is really about a quarter mile away. We have issues pertaining to, or allegations certainly pertaining to contract zoning, potential violations of the MPC. If Mr. Borda is not able to challenge that, then really who is, in the sense of there are so few people around it. And I think that has to also be taken into account in addition to the testimony that was presented before as to his specific harm or how he is specifically impacted by what is before the board tonight.
Adam, thank you very much. Adam, can you comment on what he said? I understand a lot of what he said, but I would like you as a legal mind to comment on what he said and if you have any contradictions or anything else you want to add to what he said.
Well, I think maybe we could let, if Barb or Mr. Harris have anything to add, and then if you want, we could maybe go into executive session and discuss some things.
Very well. Barb, Mr. Harris?
I'll give it a first shot. The case law on standing is rather clear. The first category of people that have standing are just like Shady Brook that's across the street. It's called having direct proximity to the property. If you're not in direct proximity, then you must, and I'm quoting from a case called Friends of Lackawanna versus Denmark Borough. In short, to meet these requirements, a party must demonstrate that the challenged action personally harms his interest in a way that is greater than of another citizen. I think if there's anything that we've heard in these proceedings, it's that Mr. Borda's concerns are absolutely identical to every person in his neighborhood. When we had the traffic engineer, Mr. Muth, their traffic engineer, testify, his last answer was that anybody that was a mile away, like Mr. Borda was, would be affected in exactly the same way as Mr. Borda. Mr. Borda agreed that everybody in his development will be heard exactly the same way. Now, by the way, we don't think there will be an adverse impact, but the point is that the perceived adverse impact has to be different than in a way that harms the citizenry in general. And over and over and over in Mr. Borda's testimony, he emphasized how all of the people in his development and all the people in that area were going to be heard by these alleged harms. That does not give you standing. Furthermore, basically, there's a case called Laughman that says, other than the increase in traffic, the appellant did not offer any testimony that the increase in traffic from present or future development in the challenged overlay district would have a detrimental effect on any of his properties. I mean, and in that case, they said if you're more than half a mile away, you're not in proximity. So what the testimony has been is that the perceived harms, which we don't agree will occur, are in fact just harms generally affecting everybody in exactly the same way. And I can't help but comment on the Temple study, where the Temple professor who testified that there was going to be this harm to property values, had a quote, which of course from a learned journal that was commenting on the effect on property values on the increase in truck traffic on a thruway in The Hague in Netherlands. The only problem was when he quoted that, he just happened to leave out that it was truck traffic in a thruway that was affecting the adjoining properties. It was not credible. It should be rejected. But the important issue that I would like to argue is that A, they don't have standing. And don't forget, we're talking about three people. We're not talking about Mr. Borda. We're talking about, I think his name is McNamara. I don't think they even tried to establish that Mr. McNamara had standing. We didn't hear anything about him. He's over in Lindenhurst, I believe. Mr. Dobson, who's 2 miles away, and I guess they had Mr. Borda because he was only 1 mile away. But the bottom line is none of them are in proximity, and none of them are affected in a way that is different than the community in general, and therefore they do not have standing to bring this action, and we would request that it be dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Barbara, Ms. Kirk, would you like to add anything?
Just briefly, in that the township joins in Mr. Harris's argument as to the standing issue. All the cases that I have reviewed have indicated it's either standing is either if you're in close proximity to the affected parcel, or if the harm that you allege must be distinguishable from that of the interests or harm that could be shared by all of its citizens. The only other thing I wanted to bring to the board's attention is because the three appellants presented 2 witnesses as experts, this board, as the trier of fact on the issue, has the right to determine whether or not to believe the testimony of those experts. I do want to point out that both experts did agree that there would be an effect by way of traffic on persons down Township Line Road, and not only just the property occupied by Mr. Borda, in addition to the expert, the Temple professor, verifying that an effect on the value of the properties would not just be suffered solely, if any, by Mr. Borda. So I just ask that the board carefully review what was said during the course of the hearings and deny the standing to proceed with the appeal. I don't think any of the harm that has been alleged is unique to the 3 appellants, but may, if it exists in the future, would affect generally everyone in the township.
Thank you, Ms. Kirk, for that. Is there anybody else that would like to say anything on the board or anybody else? If not, Adam, if I could, I would like to request an executive session just for some legal advice.
Sure. Can the administrators put us in a breakout room briefly?
Moving you now.
do, and they were answered by our attorney, Adam. Now, based on that, I would like to entertain a motion for this to the board.
I will put forward the following motion that Appeal 20-1881 regarding the challenging mixed-use overlay district, that the applicants do not have standing.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I believe we need some discussion.
Yeah. I would start off by saying I've listened to the applicants' professionals, and I have a hard time identifying how the applicants have any unique differences from anybody else in not only, their subdivision, but there are several other large subdivisions nearby that have almost identical issues. So I don't see how there's a uniqueness to any of the applicants that would identify them as having standing in this project.
Pete, you like to say anything? No? You don't have to.
I'm going to pass on this.
I'll just say this has been hard, and believe me, I've never read so much in my life. This is not a typical case that the zoning board has, so I didn't want to feel like I was stupid. And I know I'm not a lawyer, but we have a tremendous board, and we did get a lot of information, and we really kept to that. I want to make sure everybody understands that we kept to the aspect of, is there standing? And I can guarantee that was done. And I just want to say that. And this was very hard for everybody, I'm sure, at both sides. On that note, if there's anybody else who would like to say something.
Just want to clarify for the motion itself, Matt, you're stating that there's no standing. And then I believe the second part of that is that you're, I guess, dismissing the appeal as a result of the lack of standing.
Correct. So let me make sure it's right. We should, because they say they want to invalidate the amendment. We should put in the motion that the appeal to invalidate the amendment is denied. If that's what, am I right on that? Am I off?
Regarding standing.
Regarding standing only.
No, that the applicant, the motion is, just so we're clear, and Matt, correct me if I'm putting words in your mouth, that the applicants do not have standing and the appeal is dismissed.
That's what Matt said.
Not denied, dismissed.
Okay. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? The ayes have it. The appeal is dismissed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Thank you, all of you. It was
Thank you for your time.
You've taxed us a lot, and I really do believe we did a great job. And I know that not everybody's going to think that.
And we're back next week for a normal meeting, but this was just the special meeting to conclude this.
This wasn't a normal meeting, Adam?
No.
Nothing about it was normal.
It was special just for everybody on this call.
But since we didn't make you wait until 8:30 just to get started this week, so we'll be back next week. We have our regular meeting.
Alrighty, next week?
Yeah,
Yes.
3 weeks in a row.
I'm going to ask for
working overtime. And so you can just make a motion to adjourn until next week.
Okay.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you.
Anybody make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Good night, everybody.
Oh, good night.
Good
Thank
night.
you very much.
Good
I
night.
appreciate everybody.